Hello, everyone. Welcome to Special Children for Special Parents. The purpose of this video is to promote awareness and encourage parents and caregivers to actively engage, interact, and understand children with special needs. So, for this topic, we will be looking at skill building and behavior modification at home. So, you notice there are three letters in the cover page because we will be using the ABC of understanding challenging behavior. So, there is an ABC, this is an acronym of understanding challenging behavior. So, let's begin. Okay, so let's watch first this very short YouTube video about Caillou, and then let's analyze and talk about the events that happened.
I don't want to be late for the circus.
The circus? Oh no, Caillou, that's not today. The circus isn't till tomorrow.
No, it's today. I got all dressed. It's today.
Come on, Caillou. Come downstairs and help me make breakfast.
No, I don't want to. Silly old car. Silly.
Caillou was in a very bad mood because he wasn't going to the circus.
Caillou, stop all this racket. You woke up Rosie. I want you to come downstairs right now.
Even Caillou's daddy was starting to get angry.
Why can't I go to the circus? I want to go to the circus.
All right, so from that short video, let's analyze the behavior, what happened, and let's see if there could be changes that we can do in order to change the outcome of the event that happened. Alrighty, so let's take a look at
I don't want to be.
So here we have two characters. We have Caillou, the child, and his father, who was approaching him in the bathroom. Okay, so as you can see, Caillou was throwing a temper tantrum. So first, he was upset that the circus was scheduled the next day, and what he did was he threw a temper tantrum. As you can see, he fell on the floor like a typical child on a tantrum, and also destroying property. He destroyed one of his toys, and as a result of this behavior, as you can see, it is a battery effect. He woke up his sister, and then as a consequence of that event, then his father got frustrated, or dad was frustrated because of what Caillou did. So it was a battery effect from Caillou throwing a tantrum, and then as a result, he woke up his sister, and that upset his father. All right, so let's take a look at this scene. Is there a way that we can correct or prevent the behavior challenges, the temper tantrum, and the property destruction instead of allowing it to happen? All right, so we're going to look at why, what happened at the beginning, and then what triggers the behavior. So let's go back and investigate kung unsa ang hinungdan ngano nga nagmanya or nagtantrum ang bata. All right, so and to look at this, so atong tan-awon ang dako nga panghitabo, o ato ang i-check kung unsay sinugdanan o ngano nga niabot sa into a temper tantrum. So let's call it the anatomy of challenging behavior. All right, so let's compare it into a volcano. All right, so at the bottom of the volcano, we see the triggers. So these are the events. These are the events, the prompts, the exchange of words that triggered the behavior to happen. And with that, the child was unable to express his feelings. So he wasn't able to really tell his father how he felt about the news that the circus was up for the next day and not that day. So then it escalated. So from the triggers, it escalated into the fact that, he has limited communication skills. So that means that he was really unable to express how he felt at that time. And with that comes frustration. So of course, if we cannot express how we feel, then we become frustrated. And frustration can lead to temper tantrum or behavior outbursts. So this is the anatomy. It starts from the bottom, which are the triggers, nag-umidusya. It's like heating up. And then, of course, considering the limitations of children um, with autistic children, we go into the language barrier, we go into the communication barrier. So of course, if you're unable to express your feelings, then it results into frustration, which eventually, as you can see in Kayo, there is a temper tantrum or a behavior outburst that also resulted into property destruction. All right, so how can we prevent this? So, the best way to look at a behavior is to take a look at what the trigger is. What is the cause? What prompted this temper tantrum from the very start? So, analyzing the trigger. And always remember, prevention is the key. There's no cure for a temper tantrum, but we can prevent this from happening. How? That is the big question. How can we prevent? Now that we have the anatomy or the analysis of how a behavior outburst or a temper tantrum originates, then let's now focus into how can we prevent this. But always remember that you cannot teach an angry child, and that's always going to be um, my reminder to myself while teaching, based on experience, that you cannot teach an angry child. Why? Well, there are several factors. Okay, it creates a wall. What creates a wall? We have the challenging behaviors, we have temper tantrum, we have aggression towards self and others, we have screaming and behavior outbursts. So all of these creates a barrier, creates a wall between you and the child who is engaging in challenging behavior. So no matter what you say, bisag kung saon pa nimo og istorya ang bata nga gisapot or nagmanya, you can never teach them. You can never teach or um, ask them to change that behavior. It will go on and on for a while. So always remember, you cannot teach an angry child. So there comes prevention is the key. So, in order to teach positive behavior, let's prevent this from happening. Since we cannot teach an angry child, so let's make sure that these challenging behaviors, all of these behaviors that are building that wall, is eliminated. It's gone. All right, so how could we do this? All right, so let's take a look at the ABC of a behavior. What are the ABC? All right, so ABC in studying behavior is we look at the antecedent. The antecedent are the situation, the actions, or event that precedes a behavior. So, what does that mean? So, this is the prompts, the directions, the events that happen before a behavior occurs. So going back into Kayo, so the antecedent, if you look back into the story in the video, the antecedent was that the circus, he was getting ready for the circus, but then To his knowledge, it was today, but dad delivered the news that the circus was not today, but tomorrow. So that is the antecedent. What happened before the behavior? All right, now we'll take a look at the behavior. So, what is the behavior like as an effect to the antecedent? So, unsa ang behavior nga gidemonstrate sa bata following that event, that antecedent. And then, after looking at the behavior, let's take a look at the consequence. So, the consequence is the result of the behavior that occurred. So, this is the event after the behavior. So, looking back into Kayo, then the behavior was he engaged into a behavior meltdown, and then he also destroyed one of his toys. So, the consequence was that dad was frustrated and that dad walked away and asked him to prepare breakfast instead. And was the issue resolved? Was he happy about it? No, Kaya was still unhappy. So, meaning that the behavior is still there, it can be triggered again. All right, so looking at the ABC, antecedent, behavior, and consequence, we will be able to prevent challenging behavior from happening. Again, prevention is the key. All right. So let's take a look at some examples first. Let's take a look at some examples following the ABC. So let's analyze behaviors, let's analyze the antecedent, and also the consequence that follows the behavior. Okay, so the ABC of understanding challenging behavior, let's review. A stands for antecedent or triggers, behavior or action for B, and C is for consequence. So atong pinulungan, antecedent means ang sinugdanan or hinungdan sa panghitabo. Ang B would be, or behavior or action would be the sapot or the manya or the behavior. Unsa ang giunsa ang pagpagawa sa bata ang iyang frustration. So most of the time there is temper tantrum, there could be aggression towards others, towards himself, or property destruction. And then, what is the result? Unsa ang resulta sa panghitabo? So, after sa tantrum, after destroying the toys, what happens next? Unsa may resulta? So, atong tan-awon ning tulo ka um, kaparte sa usa ka panghitabo. Unsay hinungdan, unsa ang pag-demonstrate sa sapot or sa manya, o unsay resulta sa sapot o manya, or unsay resulta sa behavior or action, which is called the consequence. All right, so let's put this into practice. Let's take a look at the ABC, antecedent, behavior, consequence of some examples. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples. So first, very common, especially on children that has delayed language or communication skills. So hunger or gutom. So some of them cannot express that they are hungry or that they need food. So what do they usually do? Of course, you may see they grab food from siblings sa mga igsuon, or if there is an adult eating, sometimes we would just grab it. And I can attest this from experience that kids that are hungry, who cannot express verbally, who cannot express even through gesture that they're hungry, they could just go straight and grab food from someone that is eating. It could be a peer, it could be an adult in the classroom, which is also happening at home. So, it could be mga igsuon, mga manghod, or mga magwang, or any adults in the house. So why? Because they're hungry, they want to satisfy that hunger. So I'm going to go and grab it. And then as a result, of course, there's power struggle. Of course, if it is a younger sibling, then of course mag-ilog sila sa food. Of course, because you grab my food, so I'm going to hold on to it. And then what happens? Physical aggression. Of course, there's going to be a power struggle and comes physical aggression. All right. Another example, requested to take a shower. Very common. I used to work at a residential facility for children with special needs. Shower is number one. They ran off. So nilakganay mo. At home, some of your children might be demonstrating this behavior. Ask them to take a shower, they're gone already, running away. So, what is that? So, the antecedent is that the child was requested to take a shower. The behavior was the child ran away from the caregiver or the parent that requested the child to take a shower. So, unsa may resulta, nidagan ang bata. That means child did not complete self-care. Wala nakaligo ang bata. Kay nidagan man. All right. Okay, another common example is this is it. Electronic device shut down, meaning the battery was drained. Wala na baterya, namatay ang tablet. Okay, so what happened? Of course, some children that are unable to express their frustration that their tablet had shut down, they engage in behavior outbursts. So, what are these behavior outbursts? Of course, they're going to cry, they're going to throw the tablet at some point, or they're going to grab someone's cell phone. The nearest person who has an electronic device. Okay, so now it becomes a problem because then the tablet or the iPad shut down. Now the child is frustrated. No, I'm going to do is I'm going to tantrum, or I'm going to toss this iPad, or I am going to grab someone's electronic device. And as a result, of course, time out. So, meaning some parents would do this, okay, since you engage in a temper tantrum, then we're going to make a timeout, no electronics for the rest of the day, which is again the problem. Like compared to Kayo, we're not really solving the problem here because the problem is still there. Because we are denying the child access. We're not resolving the issue that it shut down. All right? Because we're denying it as a result of the behavior. But the behavior originated from the iPad that had shut down because the battery was drained. Okay, so these are some examples, common examples that happens at home, it happens at school. So, having the ABC, antecedent behavior and consequence, where can we correct the behavior? So, let's take a look at this very slight space. All right, so in green, you will see intervention. All right, that is a very slight space in between the antecedent and the behavior. That is where we are gonna uh, apply the intervention. Dirita sa tunga-tunga sa antecedent of behavior, atong i-analyze. Unsay atong buhaton to prevent the behavior from happening. So naapata sa antecedent, tunga-tunga pata. So unsa atong buhaton? So those are the interventions. This is the place where we will be able to reverse the behavior from happening. All right. So unsa may tumong? Why do we have to apply intervention? All right. So our goal is to understand and shape behaviors to improve social interaction, encourage effective communication, and foster independence in self help skills in young children with autism spectrum disorder. So, what does that mean? So, an intervention, which is in between the antecedent and the behavior, that is where we teach the child. We reshape the behavior to improve social interaction. We all know that one of the symptoms of ASD is that they withdraw from social interaction. So this is our chance to introduce, to build that skill to improve their social interaction. Also, encourage effective communication. So let's take a look at what can we do, small gesture, or what can we do to encourage communication, even if the child is nonverbal. We can still find a way to encourage communication. All right, and that is part of our intervention. And then independence and self-help skills. So how can we encourage a child to complete a shower? We already know nga mudagan ning bata that this child would run away once I deliver the prompt to take a shower. All right, so our aim are to improve social skills, social interaction, also encourage effective communication, and also facilitate independence in self-help skills. How can we teach the child without running? So that very little space that we have, kind of gamay nga space between the antecedent and the behavior, is where we can reverse the behavior or the consequence that may result from the behavior. All right, so as you can see now, what are our goals in shaping the behavior? So let's review. Nganong i-shape man nato ang behavior? Nganong i-correct man nato ang behavior? All right, one of the reason is that to improve social interaction, since they already have the symptoms of withdrawing from social interaction, does not maintain eye contact, and does not associate with other kids. Let's build that skill. Let's teach that skill slowly. Let's improve that social interaction through the intervention. And then to encourage effective communication. So we could ask ourselves, if the child is nonverbal, then how can we encourage communication? All right, so there are ways that we will be studying on how to encourage effective communication even if the child is nonverbal. Okay, so just a disclaimer that speech and language pathologists are specialists in this area. But as parents, teaching at home, we also have some ways as parents, as caregivers, to encourage effective communication. So, speech and language therapy is very important. Also, we work hand in hand with them by working with the child through intervention to encourage them to communicate at home. All right. And then build that self help skills. This is very important based on my experience. Taking care of themselves independently is very important because as they grow, we don't want to see them being dependent to caregivers. We would like to see them take care of themselves as they grow, as they mature. So we will find a way to intervene between the antecedent and the behavior in order to teach or to build that independence in self-help skills. So how could we achieve this goal? Okay, we have all these goals for shaping behavior. So how can we achieve these goals? What can we what are ways, all right, to achieve these goals? First, analyze triggers or antecedents. That very little space between the antecedents and the behavior. Analyze the triggers. That's the line that we can work on in order to produce positive consequence or positive effect. All right. Eliminate challenging behavior. So our very aim is, again, going back into the previous slide, we cannot teach an angry child. So that challenging behavior builds a wall between the caregiver and the child. So let's eliminate those challenging behavior. Now we already see that there is a little space between the antecedent and the behavior. And we have that opportunity to eliminate or lessen those challenging behavior. And then encourage positive outcome. Make the task enjoyable. Make the task produce positive outcomes. All right. So, what can we do to achieve these goals? So now we have goals. Now we know what we need to do to achieve these goals, and then what can we do as caregivers, as parents, to achieve these goals? All right. So again, eliminate negative triggers that produce challenging behavior. So again, by achieving, in order to achieve, is to make sure that we are aware of the triggers that will produce challenging behavior. Also, utilize positive communication. All right, so this is very important to build that social interaction. To improve social interaction, we have to model. We have to model to the children on how to positively communicate. So, as we go on with our techniques on shaping behavior at home, we will talk about using positive communication and then utilize strategies and intervention. So, again, going back into that little space between antecedent and behavior, we utilize strategies and intervention. So, in our next videos, we will be talking about strategies and interventions. So, strategies to improve social interaction, intervention to encourage effective communication, and then also some positive approach to improve independence in self-help skills. So we need to know the strategies and interventions because that is a way in order to reverse a negative consequence into a more positive outcome, and that is to reduce the behavior or to change the behavior that is expected when we present a prompt or an antecedent. All right, so strategies and interventions are the key to turn around a behavior and produce positive outcomes. All right, so let's look back to Kayo. So let's look back into the video. Let's recall. All right, so let's study the ABC. First, antecedent. So what was the antecedent? All right, Kayo was expecting, oh, the circus is today. I'm brushing my teeth. Here I come. Dad delivered the news that circus is not today, but tomorrow. All right, so what are the triggers? Or unsang hinungdanan sa tantrum? Where did it originate? It did not originate mainly from the news that circus is not today but tomorrow. But the triggers. Let's look at the symptoms of ASD. What are those symptoms that could trigger behavior outbursts? So, first, change of routine and schedule. Remember that one of the characteristic or one of the symptoms of ASD is that they're very strict in following their routine and schedule. So for Kayo, he is already programmed that the circus is today. Now, withdrawal of preferred activity or expectations. At this time from the video, it is the circus. He was excited to be in the circus. He was expecting that the circus is today. So, withdrawal, taking that excitement away, can also trigger frustration. So, again, we're following the steps of what are the behavior, what are the triggers. It's not really the circus was today or tomorrow, but we're going to look at the symptoms of ASD. So, first, the change in routine. Second, the withdrawal of preferred activity or expectation. And then the third one is he was left with no choice but to deal and resolve the issue. As you can recall, let's go downstairs. Dad told him, let's go downstairs and just make breakfast. Was the issue resolved? No. As you can see, Kayo was unhappy. So there was no effective communication. Instead, Dad asked him to do another thing after getting frustrated. So the behavior was not addressed. Instead, the behavior was prompted by another prompt to make breakfast. Okay, so these are the triggers. The triggers are we're looking at the symptoms or the manifestation of ASD. So these three are examples that could create that problem behavior. Okay, now, so we have the antecedent, and now we are expecting a behavior. So let's take a look at what we can do. Remember, the intervention is in between the antecedent and the behavior. So we have that leeway, we have that space to make possible interventions. Okay, number one, what can we do? So, one thing that we can do is offer similar preferred activities as options. So, instead of saying it's canceled, it's tomorrow, the change in routine, you don't drop it like a bomb. Instead, offer similar preferred activities as options. Also, encourage the child to express, suggest alternative activities or options. Excuse me. So instead of the adult, if we can also teach the child to problem solve by asking them, since it's tomorrow, then is there any activities, the alternative activities or option that you want to do today? All right, so here are some examples from the possible intervention. So, offer similar preferred activities as options. So, we can ask Kayo or the child, since the circus is tomorrow, we can go to the park today. So, it's a similar going out of the house, and the park is fun. Or you can also say, since the circus is tomorrow, we can go for a drive and get ice cream or eat out. So these are, as you can see, these are similar preferred activities. Who doesn't like to eat ice cream? Who doesn't want to go for a drive and get ice cream or eat out at Jollibee or McDonald's? All right. So not a single child would say no to it. Or we can go to a park and play. So these are some positive events that you offered, similar as an option. You offered option instead of saying it's tomorrow, we have to wait. All right. Now, another way is to encourage the child to problem solve. Since it's tomorrow, while waiting for the circus, is there any activity that you would like us to do instead? All right. So this time, you're not really telling the child that circus is not today but tomorrow, but instead, while waiting, so, meaning you are assuring the child that we will still go to the circus tomorrow, but today, is there any activity that you would like us to do? So, this time you are empowering the child. You are empowering the child to problem solve, to give a suggestion of his preference, um, to alternative activities or options. All right. So, those are the possible intervention. So then we're looking at the positive consequence. So from this possible intervention, do you think that the child will still engage in problem behavior? Okay, so there is a high percentage that the child would not engage into a temper tantrum. Why? Because you offered alternative activities and you empower the child to problem solve. And positive consequence would be the result of these possible intervention instead of negative consequence that the little sister woke up and then dad got frustrated. So eventually those things may not have happened if we place interventions in between the antecedent and the behavior. Okay, so know and avoid possible triggers and empower the child to problem solve using positive communication. So at this time, the positive communication is that you are encouraging the child to make choices, and at the same time, also you are encouraging or empowering the child to suggest or to express alternative activities or options. So that is the essence of the ABC of behavior. We need to take a look at a specific behavior We need to look at the antecedent and the triggers. And again, the triggers are the symptoms, the characteristics. So we need to understand that children with ASD has some needs, some delays, some social delay in social skills, delay in communication, and also they are very rigid when it comes to schedules and routine. And now that we know those triggers, then what can we do? What are the possible interventions that we can do in order to revert a possible temper tantrum, a possible behavior outburst? All right. So we'll focus more on our upcoming video, possible intervention. We will start with the very basic interventions that you can do at home, and then to the more complex interventions that we can use in order to prevent problem behavior and to eventually um, have a positive consequence after an antecedent or after an event. Okay, so let's take a review on what we have discussed in this segment. So, challenging behavior. So, let's take a look at challenging behavior. Where does this come from? It does not happen in an instant. There are some factors that we need to consider in order for that challenging behavior to happen. All right, it starts with antecedent and then triggers. And then after that, since the child has limited communication skills, that is unable to express feelings or reason out, then the child or the individual becomes frustrated. And that goes true because if you cannot reason out, if you cannot express how you feel, then you get frustrated because you're not getting me. You're not understanding how I feel. So I get frustrated. And so what happened? Then challenging behavior occurs. Then behavior outburst occurs. And what does it means? It is the temperature is getting higher. So then it's elevated. The child is mad. So then going back into my mantra that you cannot teach an angry child because you are already above the meter. The mood meter is already on the highest peak. All right, so represented by the thermometer. Okay, so what can we do instead? So, in order to shape positive behavior or outcomes, what can we do? All right, first, avoid possible triggers by rephrasing the prompt and offer alternative activities or choices. So, we look at the triggers that may follow the antecedent. The antecedent is the event or ang panghitabo, and then it will result into triggers. So triggers could be change in schedule or routine. It could be um, targeting their limited communication skills, or it could be also the socialization skills, the delayed socialization skills. All right. So when we identify the triggers and going around those triggers by offering alternative activities or choices, then we encourage communication. We empower the child to either make choices or to offer choices. So then it will be positive interaction and also teaching them the skills of problem solving. And all in all, it then we get a desired or a positive consequence. So the effect after we implement the intervention would reverse the behavior into a positive behavior that that will result into a positive or desired consequence. So again, going back into our one of our examples about taking a shower, and then we add, and then the child, we know that the child would run off. So what interventions can we do in between in order for the child to shower, and the positive outcome is that the child completed self care. All right. So also when the example of the child that is hungry and unable to express hunger, we already know that he's gonna grab food from the siblings or from adults around him. Now let's take a look at some intervention. What can we do to reshape the behavior into a positive or desired consequence? All right. So and that means cooling down. So challenging behavior is heating up, while shaping positive behavior is cooling down. All right. So we can reshape the outcome of an event by identifying and preventing possible triggers, offering possible alternatives, and empower the child to develop problem solving skills. All right, so up next, now we have already studied the basics of ABC, identifying the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence of a behavior, and also looking into interventions between the antecedent and the behavior to produce a positive outcome. So we are going to go into the basics. How can we encourage positive response in shaping behavior at home? So, how could we encourage positive communication? How could we encourage to improve socialization skills? And how could we encourage to um, to build those problem solving skills and self help skills, or encourage independence in completing self help skills? Okay, so we are going to go from the very basic down to the more complex. So we're going to learn, if you haven't heard about this, the first then sentence strip. So this is the mother of all communication approaches. First then. And in the token economy, we'll go after it, and of course having visual schedules and directions. So why did I say visual schedules and visual directions? Because again, some children diagnosed with ASD has limited communication skills, so we need to communicate with them through visual representation, because visual representation is very important in delivering schedule, making that they are following the routines, and also delivering a prompt to enhance their understanding. All right, so that's all for today. I hope that our topic for today offers a valuable input. And then on our next videos, we will be learning now about specific interventions that you can use at home. All right. Thank you for your time.